Everybody, this is David here from Democratize XR. First video under that new branding. Um, the first video I want to make is about how you can use Woorld, which is on the Quest Pro, I believe. I'm not too sure about other headsets, but I've got a Quest 2. And I wanted to show you how you could use this for flight planning. I'm a sort of amateur sim pilot. Microsoft just released New Zealand scenery yesterday, so I made a little flight plan and I flew it a couple of times with some friends, and I sort of was thinking, well, imagine there was like a Google Earth thing with multiplayer where you could go in together and you could do some flight planning. So this is for the bush pilots out there, any amateur pilots, but let me know if you think this is a good use case and how it could be improved. So Woorld, sorry, has uniquely this kind of sketching feature here. So I'm going to use this sketching pen, and I've planned a route which I'm going to draw this route roughly. So I've planned a route which starts at just outside Queenstown. There's a what do you call it, a parachute center out here. The main airport is over there where you can see the orange line where I've drawn a kind of a flight profile or a flight path for a go around. We start here. I'm just going to draw this up in the air later because I'll draw details later underneath it. This is a ski resort. Then the plan was to fly over this main municipal airport, the I don't know if it's an international airport, but the main regional airport, and then over the town here, and then I made a flight path that goes over these pretty big mountains. I'm just going to move myself now. So I have to use the joysticks to move myself, which is a little bit awkward. There's a beautiful airfield at Glenorchy. It runs actually parallel to this bit of coastline there. And then the idea was to fly up these valleys here, and there's a couple of options. So as far as I could tell, if you're in something that doesn't really have the performance, you could go, I think it was down this way, where you don't need to climb quite as much. Or if you're in a high performance aircraft, you can just climb straight over these mountains that way. And then there's another bush field, or I don't know what you call it, but a grass strip in very dense forest over here at Jamestown, where there's a kind of hiking cabin. And then if I turn myself around here, there was, so excuse the jerky movement, I can't really make that more smoother, this flight over pretty big mountains into Milford Sound. And what we discovered was you want to kind of drop down here and then approach that way. You'll see this when I zoom in later, that we can get a much better view of this. So I'm just creating the overview just now in case you're wondering. And then I can't really remember. So yeah, I think the last leg was along this valley here, maybe to about here, where there's a place called, is it Quinn's Cabin? Quintin Lodge. We'll see it once we zoom in. So that's like high level planning, which I think it could be useful. It's slightly clunky just from the way you move around. I personally would love it if you could just use the grab buttons, which are right now laser pointers, and grab the world. You can, if you remember to turn off the pen, you do move the world around by effectively grabbing it. But it's difficult to move because there's two modes. One is you move the map across this area that I've got set out here, and the other one is you move yourself relative to this kind of map area. So that was what I thought of as that overall flight planning. So it's a bit rough. You could do this on little nav map or any kind of map planning, but this is, three-dimensional. I've done this at this scale level on purpose. So as you'll see, I could have scaled it up maybe to that much, and you can see the map loads in at a higher level of detail. So the reason I drew these lines quite high up in the air is I did want to zoom in like this, and you'll see As I zoom in, the level of detail increases massively. So here is this airstrip. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the airstrip for the parachuting club. And what's interesting about it, as you can see here, is it has a direction where I'm not too sure if the winds ever come from that direction, but you could be potentially taking off straight into these mountains, which I think you'd never do. I'm an amateur sort of hobby pilot in the simulators. I have flown, with my stepdad, but I don't think he'd ever take off into that. But I did find out that if you were doing that and you're in something with a sort of high lift, not too sure where the color is not selected. There we go. You can actually take off, and if you've got enough, rate of climb, you can get up quite nicely and make your turn out and avoid those mountains there. Otherwise, generally I would be saying, this is strange. I've lost that pen. Nope. Completely lost my menus. Now I've got a different mode here. The user interface, I must say, from this app is a bit clunky, and it changes by itself there. So this would, of course, be your other, takeoff trajectories over the water there. It's a tricky field because you do have a rise there. So you obviously need to be prepared, make sure your plane's, checked out, all that kind of stuff. The other thing we did, that's annoying. So maybe I just have to start erasing some of this stuff. That is a weird user interface. Anyway, so these, that's annoying. Why doesn't it grab? I can't. All right. If you're watching this, developers, please improve this. It's horrible to use. Put it back in the hand. That worked better because I could grab it, and then I have to remember to turn it off. So okay, making user interfaces in XR is not easy. I should know that from my time in Gravity Sketch. So here was another example. This is the sort of regional airport, and I was just drawing, what a touch and go flight profile could be like. I have no idea if that's accurate. It was just to show that you can draw, and moreover, you can do that on a very detailed 3-dimensional map in this application. So you can see all of the hazards, all of these things. It would, of course, be amazing if you could measure the height of these things. At the moment, there's no way to get that data out. You'd have to look on a separate map. But you can see all of the obstacles, all of the things that you need to take care of. And I think for certain kind of, backcountry flying, it's probably useful. So this airfield is obviously an easy one. You wouldn't probably fly that shorter circuit. You would probably just, be going in and out of that. Or if anybody watches this who knows that airfield, there's the full context for you. So you probably do it maybe a bigger circuit, but you do have these fairly large hills on this side of the airfield, which would make any kind of approach in. You'd have to take care. I'm assuming here. So let's go out to that second stop. So the second one, and obviously this line, I've drawn it rough. It wasn't accurate. You'd probably fly over these mountains, give them a good clearance, or if you're in a bush plane or something like that, maybe you'd want to see the detail. That's certainly what I did. I flew down here to get all that detail. But you can see having a 3-dimensional map is a really cool thing. This airfield here, what's it? Was it Glenorchy? It was a pretty easy one. So you can see here when we zoom in, it'll load in the detail. It is raised up on a plateau here. So I'm not too sure about the accuracy of the terrain data. It looks like it's got a bit of a curve on it. I think terrain data this is Bing Maps is partially created from photogrammetry or from satellite scans. I'm not too sure, but you can see there that definitely has a curve down. I didn't notice it in the flight sim. It could be that the flight sim flattens it. Anyway, this is not such a difficult one, but you need to be aware it's above the level of the water, which is probably not too far off sea level. And then, that's a huge assumption here. It could be significantly above. yeah, so that's a relatively straightforward approach. And if we zoom out, you can see here there wasn't too much apart from these mountains. We did, I think I did do a circuit um, this direction. So you can see I've already stopped using that 3D pen because it's painful. Um, so let's just see, I can't scale it up or down now. That's the problem. So I did do a circuit. I think I flew in, and what I realized was that there's a couple of hills there. So you need to watch those when I came down like that. Because you're kind of descending on that downwind leg typically, and then you cross over here. And these hills were enough to, certainly cause you concern when you're in poor visibility. Wouldn't do that. Anyway, that's me in flight planning mode. Um, Again, the user interface is painful, but such a powerful tool. It's totally worth persevering. Then, as I said, there was these two options here. So you'll see these are pretty big mountains. They're 7,000 feet, I think. And I was in a Kodiak, which is a turboprop. I just like flew straight over these mountains, no problem. But if you were in perhaps a 152 or something that's maybe not got such a good climb, I was entertaining the idea of going along this track here and then down into the valley. And I think I'll do it just to see, and something that's kind of anemic and doesn't really have the performance. I'd love to see if I could get an aircraft through that channel there. Anyway, it was pretty easy to plan the approach for this one. You've got this very big lake here, loch. I'm not too sure what you call them in Finland, New Zealand. But you'll see in this field here. So, by the way, this space I've got here for the maps doesn't need to be so big. I've just kind of made it maximum size. But as you see here, I can, just make this something which is a bit more manageable. The bigger the better, of course, if you've got more people and you're doing that planning together. So yeah, drag this into the center of my square, and then we'll zoom up. So this one was a very difficult field for people to see. I'm just going to turn my chair here so I don't get my blue ring. Yeah. So this field, it was just difficult for people to see. It's got trees either side, and effectively, if I can get it in the middle, you can only really see it. So you couldn't see it like you can on this map from here. It was obscured by trees. And the problem was you fly along here. I actually need the bigger map again. So you fly along this loch. Let's just go like this. And actually, I recommended everybody to fly alongside these mountains here, and then to turn in to give you enough space to turn in, because you can't really be further left than there. You could, I think you're too high if you go over these mountains and in. So let's just draw that as I wanted it. So this is where the zoom level becomes tricky. Just making sure I've got a bit of space here so I don't hit anything with my hands. So yeah, sketching again. I was saying to everybody, like, fly along here, do your descent, and then, do your turn in as soon as you see the field on the right. I'm not too sure if it's a better approach, to come in like that, a little bit higher. I felt like the descent rate would have been too high. And, if you come in anywhere closer, you're probably you're not going to drop down safely. So I felt like this was the best flight path in. Because, as I said, the main problem here was you simply couldn't see this runway. It's literally a road. You can see here this is a hunting lodge, and it will load in a higher quality textures in a second. So hunting lodge seems to be, a road that they dual use as the airstrip here. But in the way Microsoft Flight Simulator have implemented it, these trees here are actually closer, higher, and really obstructive. It's very hard to get in at that. So it's long enough, but very hard to get in at, because even when you're at this kind of angle, you couldn't see it because the trees if you imagine the trees are high. So again, we could use our 3D sketching here, put some trees in, and we could say, yeah, be aware here, the trees are like this. Let's just, I have no idea why it changed color. Must have just touched it. So trees here, and on the other side as well. And what this meant, maybe we can see this if we zoom out again. Sketch mode off. Yeah, what this meant is when you were on this approach from here, you couldn't see that because those trees were blocking it. So again, I think again a good use of 3D stereoscopic multi-user application. There was then this flight over Milford Sound. We again probably you wouldn't do it this way. We flew straight over the mountains there. We're in a high performance aircraft. I think you might want to, if I just give it a blue there, maybe the safer flight path, considering you're taking off in this direction, would just be to go along the coast and then fly along the sound there instead of flying over. Because what it meant, as you can see here, is we were gaining height to get over the mountains, and then you have a pretty steep drop. And if I zoom in, you'll see here, and we get the nice 3D detail that these are very steep mountains. There's a famous fjord or sound, and if you come in here, unless you choose one of those valleys, or maybe even this one, you could drop down into it. You're just too high. It's just not a good approach, basically. So if I zoom in, hopefully this will load more detail. Yeah, so you can see the airfield here. Not too sure if this is ice on this part, but I think it does get cold here. So you can see if you're flying down this valley here, you're not going to be able to land here. So you have to approach it from that way. So yeah, let me just draw this in. So yeah, ideal approach. Again, I'm just playing around with the height and the scale here. Okay. So again, I'll just use red, orange for approach. So yeah, you want to be coming in, something like that. Ideally along the fjord. Maybe you could come in across that valley. And one of the tricky bits is you have to come pretty close to this hill here to get in, to line it up. So you're coming along here. You probably could come down this one as well. But, again, you've got to climb over that ridge. You want to be in free air. I don't know. Maybe it'll be interesting to know from real pilots how you approach Milford Sound. Anyway, I thought it was a good way to talk about how this technology, can be used to help the approach. We then had this flight where we took off from here. I'll go back to drawing, so I should have stayed in that before. And again, this is kind of a no-go because if you take off here, you're straight into mountains and a valley, and pilots generally never fly up valleys because they just end up in ridges like that, and then you're dead. So this one we took off, went alongside this in this open space here, used that to do a turn, which is probably risky as well, and we flew up this valley here, which was beautiful. Because Quintin Lodge, I believe it is just along the valley. And Quintin Lodge is this is the field here. It's a really difficult one. So let me just zoom in. So yeah, I don't think you'd go over these mountains. You would fly up this approach. It's just horrible because for an aircraft, you basically may struggle to turn around and find a landing spot. I do see now actually there's a nice flat bit of valley up there, but essentially you're in all sorts of trouble. So let's just get into the perspective of the pilot here. So we're heading for that spot over there. We've come along this this valley from Milford Sound. So let's just zoom up. Yeah, and so I just flew this along here, and then let's move this along. Yeah, so you're trying to come to that field. Sorry, I've lost the target. Zoom up a bit more so we get there. So as a pilot, I don't know what height. Again, you want to line up to your runways, but the problem is you've got this little dumpling hill here. So you want to fly your approach close to this hill, and then you're coming in here. It's horrible. You've got a hill here as well. And yeah, if I draw my laser scanner, you want to come in on this little tiny runway here. A friend of mine who I was flying with in the sim said, I'd just go there in a helicopter. And you can see why. It's just a very difficult approach here. I want to zoom up even more just to see if I can get it to load in another level of detail. No, that's about it. But yeah, Dumpling Hill is in the way. And then let's draw this. Let's use our drawing skills. So I'm struggling a bit here, so please forgive me with that, because I need to get it at a zoom level where I can draw this flight path more or less in one stroke, just so it looks good. So yeah, coming along here, you're descending, of course. You don't want to come in too steep. Sorry, I'd be a bit lower than this. Deleting is not easy, as I said. Oof. So maybe you'd be lower, and then you want to come in, like that, land there. So you're close to that hill, danger. You're close to that hill, which is the worst, danger. You've got no go around, so that's what you call like a one-way approach. So that you'd need to really, really plan for this, because if anything happens on this approach, you can't abort and fly up that valley. That's death. You definitely can't go up that one. That's too much of a climb, and you can't go into that. So it's like basically death in every direction. However, if you've got a plane that's slow enough, I haven't seen any pictures of airplanes there on Google actually, but yeah, pretty cool that this thing exists. So let's just do something here, which is a nice feature. You can drag this in, and it should give us 360 views of the area. So this doesn't look recognizable, but certainly the kind of jungle you've got there. Let's try this again. I think the lodge was showing up. No. Anything on this airfield? No. So it's obviously just finding the closest 360 image it can. I'll just try that again. Ah, right. So here we go. This is actually the lodge. Beautiful place for hiking, obviously, but you can see the hills around it are just like straight up in every direction. So the airfield must be going along that way, which is a direction I can't see. Let's just shift this around, see if I can get any other spots. Oh, this is in the walkway. That's in the walkway as well. It seems to be just a walkway. But I mean, you can see how powerful a planning tool this could be. I wanted to do this actually in other places, so let's go back. I'm lost. So yeah, it was along here, Milford Sound. Again, let's drag in a 360 pin, see if we can get anything on the airfield. Yeah, there's an aircraft over there. This is the roads. So Milford Sound, very high, very steep mountains, very difficult approach. So, but what a cool tool for planning. You've got your 360 photographs. You've got a three-dimensional map. For me, that's a pretty powerful tool for planning. And yeah, now you can see why people come to Milford Sound. I think the airfield is just there. That's a marina, so that you're landing in there. That's definitely no go to come out. That's the valley that goes up to Quintin Lodge. And yeah, your approach is either down, that valley there, maybe not over here because you're just kind of dropping onto it, or along that fjord, maybe that one as well. But absolutely insane place to fly by the looks of it. And yeah, hopefully you got the impression how you could use this tool Woorld on Quest Pro for flight planning. I'd love to hear from real pilots, if it's useful. I'm sure if you had some tools just to draw, proper arcs and curves and a little bit better control over where you were in the map. But if anybody wants to try this with me, talk about how you could use it for flight planning, just let me know in the comments. That's all for now, and that was how you can use XR for flight planning.